Just hi. I think I'm live. Not sure. Never totally sure if these things work. Hey guys, please put in the chat where you're coming in from and your name. And we'll wait a couple minutes for everyone to join. But the first question I'm going to ask everyone is, do they think drinking is a good or a bad habit? So chime in, let me know what you think. This is probably a really tough topic for some people because everyone has a different view on drinking, if it's good or bad. What do you guys think? So, I feel like everyone has it's a very divisive topic, drinking. So, I think habits, like in general, aren't good or bad unless they cause us what I would call unease, right? So if something causes us pain or suffering in any sense in our lives, it's not a good habit. And what I do in my coaching business, and for those of you guys who don't know, I'm Lady Fuller, and I'm a Habits for Happiness coach. So what I do is I help people shed limiting beliefs and really bad habits and then walk into a life full of healthier habits and, sort of taking on their whole power. So welcome you guys. And tonight's Monday night live series is drinking. Is it a good or bad habit? And most of the habits I've covered so far have been sort of soft, right? Like I've covered snoozing and I've covered breath work and water and sort of these other type of habits. But, drinking's a big one, and it's a topic that not a lot of people like to talk about, mainly because everyone has different viewpoints on it, and also people feel really sort of like attacked. So just so you guys know, like I'm just talking to the masses, and I'm going to tell you guys about my drinking journey, and my decision to stop drinking and how that's impacted my life. But it's not a recommendation or a suggestion to anyone. It's just an offering that there are other things that we can choose. I think the interesting thing about drinking is that most of us don't think too much about it. And when we do think about drinking, a lot of us, and I can only speak for myself, when I drink, I spend a lot of time worrying about it. And so in a weird way, I was stealing my own time because I would worry about drinking. Did I drink too much last night? Did I say the wrong thing? What's the effect on my health? I don't feel great, those type of things. And so that cognitive dissonance and sort of shame was one of the main reasons why I quit drinking, actually, because I couldn't really handle the inner war that was going on for me anymore. Now, for many of you, you may not have any trouble with drinking in the sense that you may drink all you want and it causes no problems for you and has never been an issue or problem for you. But I would suggest that, or I would assume that for most of you guys, say yes in the chat, maybe if you're willing, at one point or another, you've questioned your own drinking. And the funny thing about drinking is that like we're taught culturally, it's so acceptable, right? So like how many of you grew up in places where your adults drank around you, right? Lots of you. And for me, so I grew up in New Orleans, which is probably the drinking capital of the world, right? And, my mother and my father both drank a lot. All of my aunts and cousins and everyone, no matter where we were, if people were happy or if they were sad, everyone drank. And so I was conditioned to believe growing up that that's what people did. That's how they socialized. That's how they dealt. That's how they cooked dinner. And in a lot of places, that's true. But in a lot of places, it's not true. And so, as my life went on and I had some trauma, a lot of you know that my mom died by suicide when I was young. Later on, I found that drinking was a lovely numbing agent. Now, drinking is a numbing agent, just like drugs are a numbing agent, or overthinking, or overeating, or procrastinating, or working. All of these things keep us small, right? And drinking was my sort of numbing agent of choice. And I definitely drank too much in high school, and I definitely drank too much in college. But in those containers, it almost felt like drinking was so acceptable that, me being maybe the drunkest one at the party or closer to the drunkest one at the party didn't feel weird. And again, like, I was always worried that maybe I was, just the only one who was having sort of this experience with alcohol. I didn't understand why when I drank, I felt the effects so much, but when other people drank, they seemed to be fine. So fast forward to my 20s, I moved to San Francisco and again was in a big party culture and continued to drink. I opened my first business and was so productive. And I actually swapped out drinking for a while with working. I sort of became this workaholic because, like drinking, it's a numbing agent, right? And I didn't have to deal with my childhood trauma, some of the rocks in my backpack, some of the pain I was carrying around, because I just stuffed it down, right? Like when I drank, I felt nothing. And how many of you guys can relate? And when I worked, I felt powerful and I also felt nothing. And working, unlike drinking, which is another topic, it actually brought me praise. So I thought, oh, here's something that keeps me numb, but also, people recognize me for. And then, in about my mid-30s, I started to have children. I moved to Colorado. And no one in my life ever said to me, I really think you should stop drinking. No one threatened to end a relationship with me. No one even really brought it up. But in my head, I knew that my drinking wasn't okay with me. And I think that's when you know something's a bad habit, right? It's like, if it's causing you unease and what, sort of in the Buddhist tradition we can say is dis-ease or disease, if it's causing you emotional pain of any sort, any habit, for me drinking, then it's not a good habit. So it really went like maybe 5 to 8 years longer of my drinking career. And one of the big reasons why I didn't quit drinking was because I was so worried what other people would think of me if I quit drinking. Now that is totally absurd. It's like ridiculous that like I cared so much that people would think I was an alcoholic, so I kept drinking. And, I would stop drinking, and I'd start drinking, and then I'd stop drinking again. And, I was like a car running out of gas. But, my drinking habits, you may be thinking, oh my gosh, how much were you drinking? I mean, I didn't drink every night. I didn't drink during the day. I loved red wine. That was my poison of choice, and tequila. And, I partied with my friends, but if I went out, I could have 2 glasses of wine. Sometimes I could have 4. We're not talking about extreme drinking here. But if I had like more than 2 glasses of wine or even 2 glasses of wine, I often laid awake from 2 to 4 a.m. and worried about who I was and why I had drank that much and why I felt I needed to drink that much. And that time that I was stealing from myself was really horrible. And I finally got to a place in my life where, I was in a marriage that was ending, and I just thought, I got to find some clarity and I've got to do something empowering. And so I made a choice to quit drinking. Now, at the time, I made a choice to quit drinking for probably like 30 days. I thought, okay, this is the end. But I didn't think, oh, I'm going to quit drinking forever. I don't think I knew that I was going to quit drinking forever. But I did find a coach, and she helped me. And this is what I offer clients, an accountability to sort of stay on the right path. And she really taught me a lot about habit change, which is the concept that we can't just take something out of our life without putting something else back, right? So it's like, okay, like I'm not going to drink. Well, most of us decide not to drink in January or October or one of these other months because we think, oh, we'll white knuckle it or through and we won't have any fun and we'll stay home and we'll read books and we won't talk to anyone and we'll live the life of a hermit, and I'd gotten to a place in my life where I wanted to have joy in my life, but I just didn't want to have drinking in my life. And so I worked with this coach, and what I offer my clients is a way to replace the drinking with healthier behaviors that actually bring you to a life full of joy. So that may sound crazy because I thought I was never actually ever going to be happy again. That sounds kind of extreme, right? Like I was like, I can't imagine that I would be able to live a life with no alcohol and be someone that anyone wanted to spend time around. But you know what? Actually, I go to parties now and I get like cornered by half the party. They're like, tell me about the fact that you don't drink. I think that's so cool. And I think there's all these people out there that are so curious about a life that's alcohol free, right? And so it is a choice like we can make. And, culturally, we're taught that drinking is the norm. But we were also taught culturally that smoking was the norm. Imagine if you just sort of lit up a cigarette in your office, or if I started smoking here on Facebook Live, you would think I was nuts. But, 30 years ago, that was totally normal. And I believe that drinking will be the same. And you're thinking, well, okay, but smoking's bad for you. We know smoking's bad for you. But newsflash, drinking is equally bad for you. Do you know that, I was reading some articles earlier today preparing for this Facebook Live, and breast cancer studies, your breast cancer rates you're 15% more likely, and put in the chat if I'm wrong here, you guys may know, but 15% more likely to get breast cancer if you drink alcohol. And for every additional drink you drink, over 3 drinks a week, you actually 10% more likely, and especially if you start drinking as a teen, right? And this is true for all cancers, not just breast cancer, but the study that I was reading was about breast cancer. And so drinking, like smoking, it's a carcinogen, right? So it's really bad for you. And, I love The Naked Mind by Annie Grace. It's a lovely book. And if you're sober curious at all, it's a great place to start. And in that book, she talks a lot about the idea that alcohol is the same as ethanol, the base of it, right? Which is gasoline. It's what you put in your car. So it's poison, but we put it in our bodies and think, we're making ourselves somehow emboldened or having fun. It's like we never have as much fun as we did that first 20 minutes after we took the first sip of drinking. The rest of drinking is sort of just trying to get back to that initial dopamine hit you feel, right? But let me back up, right? So this whole idea of bad habits of drinking, you may be saying okay, lady, well, what are you replacing it with? Do you sit home and have no friends? And I have tons of friends. And actually, I tell people the way that I coach my clients is this. Life is like a series of radio stations, right? So we're given life and we're given a dial. And what we don't realize is that we have a choice to turn the dial and change our frequency. So when I drank, which was 25 years of my life, I was living at a very low frequency. I had a victim mentality, was super mad at everyone else for giving me the life that the cards I believed I'd been dealt. And, the interesting thing is when I stopped drinking, I changed my frequency, which I think is true for everyone who decides to go into any form of abstinence around a habit that's not serving them. And my frequency rose, and it rose a certain amount when I first quit drinking. I remember actually feeling I could see, I could smell and taste, and my senses were on fire for that first year. But then it actually kept rising, which was a surprising thing. I didn't know, I was oh, I feel amazing. Waking up, I don't feel like I have a headache because I didn't drink red wine last night. But more than that, my ability to have my intuition on, my ability to make good decisions in my life, my relationships with myself and others, my ability to have compassion and empathy for myself and others, and my ability to connect to the people I loved and that which is greater was so much higher, right? I kept going up the level of frequency, and that's sort of our journey, right? And so if you're on a spiritual path, or if you have a sort of growth mindset or whatever, we always want to be the best and brightest and fullest versions of ourselves, right? But you know, it's funny, like, at least for me, and I think for many people, drinking is like you're on fire, like your soul's on fire, and it's like it's like just pouring water on your fire, right? It's just putting out and taking away all of the gifts that you have to share with other people in the world, right? And so, you know, as I'm talking about this radio station frequency, like as you raise your vibration or as you raise your frequency, and it's taking away anything that's bad habit in your life, right? Overeating, overworking, over whatevering, anything that's keeping you numb, and you go up that sort of radio dial and find a higher vibration, then life is tough, but it's also super easy. You know, so going back to what I replaced it with, what did I replace it with? I replaced alcohol with clarity. So now, like, even if I want to stay up late, I love my mornings. I'm not willing to compromise on my mornings. I'm not willing to compromise on like the work that fills my bucket. I'm not willing to compromise on my time. And I'm not willing to steal my time. So those things are way more important to me than like catching a buzz, right? And do I have fun? I have tons of fun. Actually, I would say as a parent, I'm much more in tune with my kids. I'm able to sort of see the wonder that we all wish that we could see through our kids' eyes, but like be right there with them. I have much more energy to read, to work, to travel, to learn. And people are attracted to me because I don't have any numbing agents going on. I mean, sure, I have some, but like, you know, I think when you turn your dial up and you reach a higher frequency, like you open yourself up to just all these amazing things, and you just don't know like what you're missing before that, right? Because what I tell my clients is like, we're all sort of homesick for ourselves, right? Like, at least when I drank, I was very homesick for the person that was in here. And I wanted to find her so badly. And all I had to do was peel away these layers of the onion that were keeping her stuck and that were keeping her hidden. And like, for all of us, imagine all the gifts we have to give the world, and we keep them hidden under all of these things that we think are helping us, but they're just keeping us at a lower radio station. And if you need any more convincing about sort of what an alcohol-free life is like, you know, I always say, if you're curious, no one in a high-power job who's doing big work, self-care, political leaders, whatnot, are abusing alcohol. They're just not. And the reason why is because they all know that it steals their time. So if you're a super high performer, athlete, you know, world leader, or a self-help guru, you're likely probably not a drinker. And so what do they know that the rest of us don't? Something, right? And it is that, you know, we can't be at our most powerful if we're throwing water on our fire. And it's an interesting thought. You know, and one of the big things that I believe that the world, you know, needs is a cool alcohol-free movement. Like, wouldn't it be cool if it was like cool not to drink? Yeah, there's entire countries and cultures that don't drink. Just because I grew up in New Orleans and was conditioned to believe that having fun meant drinking, there's a lot of fun to be had that involves not drinking. Yeah, there is. Believe me. And I think, you know, if you're interested and you want to know more, please send me a DM, type yes in the chat. I'm going to see if you guys have any questions. Please throw a question out there. Getting questions about, let me see, I'm really bad at reading the chat and answering questions at the same time. What was the hardest part of giving up drinking? So, you know, I think the hardest part was the initial decision to do it. I did it on September 17th of 2017. And I woke up one morning and I was in my robe, and I actually sat on my couch, and I just said to myself, I am so, excuse my language, fucking sick of being hungover. I'm so tired of it. Like, it was a beautiful day outside. I wanted to go do something, and I didn't feel like it. I felt like watching TV. And I thought, you know, I love to be in nature. Like that's probably like one of my like happiest places. And I was like, this fucking sucks. I'm 41 and I'm sitting on my couch and I didn't want to be. And you know, why am I doing this to myself? No one was telling me to pour alcohol down my throat. And that was a made a decision. So I found a coach. And I, you know, I think that was the initial decision. Once I made the decision, it pretty much stuck because I knew that a life, the way I was leading it, wasn't going to go in a place that I wanted it to go. I wanted growth. So yeah, making that initial decision was probably the hardest part. Do I have desire to drink? You know, it's funny, you know, COVID happened and I actually didn't have this like amazing desire to drink. You think that I would, given that it was like the worst year of my life. 2020 was the worst year of my life, one of them. And no, you know, the one thing that I like would write in my gratitude journal, like, thank God I don't drink, thank God I don't drink. And the reason is because I think that I'm addicted to my clarity. You know, not drinking is a superpower. Newsflash. If you want to feel powerful in this world, not drinking will give you that power. And why? Because so many people are drinking and so many people are numb, maybe not just drinking, so many people are numb, that if you want to be clear and like raising back to this idea of like raising your vibration, if you want to be one of those people that feels clear and what is connected to God or universe or source or whatever you call it, you know, not drinking is actually like the way. It is. Yeah. More questions. Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, that's a good question. So, you know, a lot of people ask me if I go to AA, and I don't actually. So I worked with a coach, and that's the same coaching that I offer for what's called gray area drinkers. So if somebody feels like they don't necessarily identify with AA, perhaps they, you know, worry about drinking. So like I would say, if you worry about your drinking and it doesn't work for you, then it's not a good habit. And I believe you could probably moderate, but I think for some of us, just taking it off the table is best. I mean, I'll give you an example, like Oreos. I'm completely like weak in the knees for Oreos, so I just don't keep them in my house. I just don't eat them. If I eat one, I'll eat the whole bag, and then I'll feel super sick, and that is not a good habit for me. So for alcohol, I think that we can make a choice when we're way upstream from being what many would identify as alcoholism. So I work with people that just, their drinking bothers them, right? It bothered me, so I quit. And I think that if we, you know, so there are other paths besides AA. And there's nothing wrong with AA. AA is amazing. And I think the whole world should do the 12 steps. But I also think that there's, at least for me, there was a feeling like if I join AA, then, you know, I'm going to be around people who have had these rock bottom moments. And I hadn't had a rock bottom moment. My desire to quit drinking was really just a personal one. And newsflash, it can be a personal one for anyone. Yeah. Other questions? What do I do when I go out at night? Okay. So I wish I was like into pot or anything. I'm not. Where I live, it's legal. What do I drink? I drink bubble water. I drink a lot of bubble water. And I actually, you know, the way I deal with it is, so I go out to a bar, let's say, or I go out with friends, which I do go out in public. I'm super social. Like it is total myth that you can't go out and socialize. And, you know, maybe after 11 o'clock or midnight, I may not want to stay out all night, but that's great because I wake up and I get a lot done the next day and I'll get to spend time with my friends and family. But back to what I drink. So, you know, I'll be known to have a non-alcoholic beer now and then, but I'm not a huge beer. I was never a big beer drinker. So like that was sort of like, don't have a huge taste for beer. In the beginning, that was a really nice crutch to have because people sort of didn't notice. But I just drink out of a wine glass and I drink bubble water with a lemon or a lime out of a wine glass. And it's funny how like your brain, you know, drinking out of a glass that it mimics the glass you might have drinking out of before, right? Like a tumbler or whatever. Like for me, it's just fine. And I love the fact that I'm getting hydrated as I'm eating and as I'm drinking and as everyone around me is, you know, probably not getting hydrated, but you know, no one sort of notices. And I'm over 40, but I would tell you, like, if you're over 40 or over most ages, like nobody really cares how much you're drinking and they're not really paying attention. And if they are, then that's like a whole nother conversation about them, not you. So yeah, just find the mocktail or whatever that works for you and, you know, go out and have fun with your friends. It's so much fun. Another thing I'll tell you, to be able to drive yourself home. I know that sounds really weird, but I live like 10 minutes from the closest town, right? So I used to have to go out and then I couldn't always find a cab home and worry about, we don't have Ubers where I live in the middle of nowhere, but that was like a thing. Like I had to be like, okay, how am I going to get home and who's going to drive? And the person who didn't drive. So now like the fun, I get to go to a restaurant and I can park wherever I want and worry about where I am because I'm not leaving my car and I get to drive myself home. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Health questions. Yeah. Yeah, hydration. So someone's asking a question about, you know, is drinking is dehydrating, right? So, but like health-wise, it's not just dehydrating for you the night of, right? It is. And so it also reduces glucose in your body. And the next day, you know, you may be craving fattier foods. So definitely if you are not drinking, your ability to eat is increased. I love to eat. I'm a foodie. It's like my favorite thing. And you don't feel inflamed. So this is a really good point, right? So when you drink, another health side effect is inflammation. So drinking inflames our bodies. And most of you, or many of you may know that inflammation causes all sorts of problems. You know, in my family, we are riddled with Alzheimer's. All of my aunts had it. And it is a disease caused by inflammation. So inflammation of the brain, all of my aunts drank a lot. I'm not saying there's a connection, but you know, inflammation is the cause of a lot of our autoimmune problems and is something we generally try to avoid. Now, if you drink, there is no safe amount of alcohol. So, you know, according to like the American, like the FDA, I think health standards, it is 1 drink per day for women and 2 drinks per day for men, not to exceed 1 or 2 for men a day as a safe level. But really there's no amount of drinking that's safe. And truthfully, like how often do women go out and drink 1 drink? Probably pretty rare, but if you can, like, good on you, and that's amazing, and you're probably not watching this video. But yeah, so, you know, anything more at one time is super hard on our kidneys, it's super hard on our liver, it's super hard on our organs, and it creates a ton of inflammation. You also creates a lot of dehydration, and it takes our bodies a couple days to reset after a night of drinking, if you haven't already noticed. And, you know, that cycle of like, drinking, you know, being hungover, feeling bad, feeling good again, that's really tough on your body. So if you want to live a long time, you know, engaging in these sort of like bad habit cycles is not a good idea. But it does feel like a good idea when you've been told your whole life that it's a good idea. Yeah. Other questions? I'll do one more and then we'll be out of time. Oh, productivity. Okay. So ways to stop drinking. So I'm going to mention 2 things. So one, creatives, anyone who's creative out there, creativity is totally put out by drinking. Again, like if your creativity is a fire and it's on like the higher frequencies of the radio station I talked about earlier, and you want to be creative and you're in a field that's creative and is about like feeling intuitive to whatever it is to get, you know, you're downloading your creativity. Drinking is like the #1 way to kill your creativity. So that's something to consider. Ways to quit drinking if you're a gray area drinker. Obviously, if you have severe problems with drinking, rehab's a great option, as well as, joining AA. But for those gray area drinkers out there, or people that are sober curious, a really good way to figure out if drinking's a problem for you is the same thing I do with my clients in food. I would just keep a drinking journal. So not stopping drinking, just literally writing down every day how much you drink, and then how it makes you feel. Might make you feel good, might make you feel bad. I don't think it'll probably make you feel too good if you're drinking too much. But so you would notice, are you drinking more than sort of like that FDA required amount? And if so, why are you drinking more? The thing about drinking, like all substances, food, overworking, overthinking, procrastinating, it's really not about that bad habit, right? It's about what's underneath the bad habit. So like when you're journaling about it, you might be noticing that there are certain triggers, right? So like something happens in your day, or, you get really steamed up and you need some way to downshift. And so for many of us, it's drinking, right? It's like a way to let off steam. But there's other ways to let off steam, right? Like you can have a glass of tea. You can take a bath. You can go for a walk with your dog. You can talk to your friends. You can hang with your family. There's all these other ways, exercise, to downshift or meditate, that are really, really healthy and actually give you more energy instead of taking it away. So it's just about retraining your brain to believe there's other ways of coping, right? And for many of us, it's just awareness. I mean, that's the first step in all change. But another way is to get a coach. I do offer, sort of habit coaching for people that are interested or curious about eliminating or curbing their drinking. Especially women. There's a lot of women out there I know that really suffer with this idea that they might be drinking more than they want, but because they don't have like a full-fledged problem, and this is sort of how I was, there's nowhere to turn, right? And it's embarrassing to give up drinking if you don't think that it would be socially acceptable not to, which sounds ridiculous, like that we'd have to let people know that, you have to justify not drinking in our society. That's totally ridiculous. But it's true. And I do help people sort of navigate that. And the one thing I will just say to everyone out there, again, to repeat myself, is like, if you want to be like your brightest and best, and if drinking doesn't make you happy, it's a really good habit to explore getting rid of or eliminating, and it's not just about eliminating the habit. It's about adding things to your life that replace it, that are healthier. And that's the truth for all habit change, right? So like habits, there's a trigger, and then there's the routine, and then there's the reward, right? And so the way that we change habits is we know that the trigger may happen, right? Like, our boss may yell at us at work, but we change the routine, and then we give ourselves a different reward, right? So it's about like just changing up how we respond to the triggers in our lives. And like, how we show up in our lives is the only business we have, right? Like we don't have any business about with other people think of us. We have no business of it. It's not our business how other people even treat us. It's only our business how we show up and how we respond to what's happening to us. And that is the path that, if you're on a spiritual journey, or if you're on a journey of any sort of growth, is the path, right? Is to control the way we respond. And if our response comes from a healthier place, then we don't sort of default to these places that we feel like we need to numb out for. Because if you can create or curate, which is happening for me now at like year 3 of not drinking, you spend time thinking, okay, I'm going to take the negativity out of the drinking. I'm going to explore what's under that. And then I get to build a life that I don't want to escape from. I'm like, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that amazing? Like, it is to me. Like, we get to curate the life we want. That doesn't mean we all of a sudden win the lottery and all of these things, but it's just about knowing that like we have control over our responses. It's really actually a beautiful thing. Sound too serious, but it is. And so thanks you guys so much for listening, and thanks for all your questions. And if you guys want to know, just DM me about coaching or more questions. And thanks for all the love. And I will also may do a series on this. And do look out, in the end of April, I'm going to be doing 21-day a cleanse, actually a 21 days alcohol-free cleanse. And I'll announce more about that in a couple weeks. But not drinking is cool, and thinking about your drinking is cool. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to be a resource. And thanks so much for joining. See you guys next Monday. New habit, new Monday. Thanks, guys.